So what I'm going to talk about is actually a talk I'm going to be giving tomorrow morning, and it's about the epic struggle of the IOT. Now, I did not come up with that title. That is actually the title of a book by an author and futurist called Bruce Sterling. He apparently was one of the guys behind the sort of cyberpunk movement with William Gibson back in the day. So he's very, very well respected. And he's got some very controversial things to say about the IoT. I don't present to you. Now, check out that quote. That's why, it's quite controversial what I'm about to talk about. Google sells network surveillance and collective intelligence. This is Google's actual profitable, monetizable product. Ouch. So, Valentine, sorry, I'm worried that the live feed might pick up the call from the mic. So Bruce Sterling, like I said, these are kind of powerful words. I've been invited by Lewis, who's sitting over there. Now, Lewis, you're an author and a philosopher, and you're completing a PhD at the Edinburgh School of Culture, Literature and Languages, is that right? And you have a reading group, and this is the text that we're going to cover, which is why I've been invited to do a talk tomorrow morning about that. And the reading group is called the Anthro-Robotic Reading Group.
Anthrobotics.
Sorry, Anthrobotics.
Yeah, it's so symbolic that one row.
So robotics, humans, cyborgs coming together. Okay, I like that. So one of the things I talk about a lot, and I'm sure you've heard me bang on about, is Web 3.0. It's kind of very closely linked to the Internet of Things and the machine web and the machine economy. But really, let me just start by defining this real quick, and then we'll dive in. Back in 1985, a guy called Sir Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web. Not the Internet, the World Wide Web. Okay? Now, the most significant difference between the early days of the web, Web 1.0, is that it was not interactive. So you could only consume data, download it one way, no interactivity. And about 10 years ago, all that changed. It became a more democratic, more interactive web, and so many refer to it as Web 2.0 or the social web. And as a result, we've got social networks like Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all those things that we've grown to rely on, potentially and love, in a lot of instances. Well, we're just about to go through yet another major transformation to Web 3.0, and it's going to be a machine-centric web, and it's going to be an autonomous web, and it's going to be powered by artificial intelligence. That's just a reality, I'm afraid, whether you like it or not, and it's going to change our lives. In some cases for better or worse, but that's something that I think is open to debate. And at the moment, there are more machines connected to the web than people, and very soon there will be far more machines connected than people. So the kinds of things I'm talking about are all these things: wearables, smart home devices, drones, autonomous transportation. Here are some figures. It's so, depending on who you talk to, they're talking about between 20 and 50 billion devices by 2020. Who knows? Time will tell. I think also it depends how you define a connected device. Is it actually just a sensor, or is it a more complex device? Who knows? Anyway, what is a thing? The standout stat is that only around 1% of all things that could potentially be connected currently are. Horse for effect. That is huge growth potential. Now, this is where it starts getting a little bit controversial. Dan, maybe you should ignore this bit. What is the corporate agenda of all these companies? Now, within my sort of close proximity, it suddenly occurred to me that I have Alexa. I use Windows 10, so I've got Cortana. My MacBook is primed for me to say Siri is a hot word. And OK Google. So my watch, I should have started my stopwatch. Anyway. So OK Google, what's the weather? That device, in order to respond, is constantly monitoring, constantly listening. So I've got 4 different AIs which are monitoring my life for convenience or not. I don't know yet. You know, I'm loving the connected home. I'm loving voice interaction. I'm using it increasingly. I'm getting used to saying, Alexa, what's the weather today? And her saying, I don't know. Actually, I should show you some video that I took of Alexa when I posted it to Facebook. It's kind of funny, but anyway. Now, the reality of the situation is there are around 5 companies. Now, Bruce Sterling refers to these organizations as the 5 kings, or GAFAM, I think. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. You know, we know who these suspects are. And the reason why they are harvesting all our data is because they want to utilize it to make their AI smarter. Why? Because like I said, this multi-trillion dollar marketplace will be powered by AI. And if you've got the best AI that's ubiquitous, and Alexa was the star of the show at CES, you know, it was all about Alexa, right? Voice, Alexa-based voice activation in cars, homes, buildings, everywhere. Now this is a massive treasure trove. And again, Sterling talks about the 5 kings and uses these sort of Game of Thrones-like kind of analogies where these sort of second-tier companies, Qualcomm, Cisco, are creating sort of, what's the word? You know, they're knights of the realm. They're the princes. They're the nobility that are revolving around these 5 kingdoms. He also goes on to say that the champions of the Internet of Things are not us. We're not nobility. We are the fodder. Okay, we are actually, you know, the crops and the cattle that are being fed to feed this monster. Okay, so that's why we're being exploited. Our data is being monetized to our cost. And essentially, if we're using any product that we're not paying for, whether it's cloud hosting solutions, storage, email products, apps that are free, you know, we are being exploited, our data is being exploited. A lot of people accept that, but maybe we should start thinking about that. I don't know, we'll see. Now, this is a bit of a weird image to put. Now, I felt that this was a good analogy to what may start to happen. As complexity starts to increase, as our cities, buildings, embedded medical devices are starting to be controlled autonomously by AI, it's not actually us as humans that are in charge. Now, this is a B-2 stealth bomber. It is not operated by the pilot. There is no conceivable way the pilot would be able to control this aircraft. The reason is because it's a stealth aircraft and it is very, very unaerodynamic. Unlike the original B-52 bomber, which is like 50, 60 years old. And it's still going, and it has very few electronics, and the pilot is in control of that aircraft. With this, because it's so unstable, essentially the pilot tells the computer what to do, and the computer goes and does hopefully what he asked it, he or she asked it to do. But the point is, the computer is having to make tiny adjustments, hundreds or thousands of times a second, to keep this aircraft in the air. The moment the computer goes down, that will simply drop out of the sky. Now, I think that complexity, that dependence on the companies that are providing these incredible, groundbreaking solutions, kind of like the fact that it's too complex for really us to understand. We kind of go, it's too complex. Here you go. You know, here are 1 million patient records to DeepMind, for example. The NHS just recently, the Royal Free Hospital in London, because they don't have the in-house capabilities to do that kind of data mining, and as a result, DeepMind apparently will save the NHS staff 500,000 hours worth of added productivity as a result of offsetting a lot of these tasks to AI, and you know, all those hours can be spent on patient care. So again, I don't know, is that a good thing? Are we creating Frankenstein's monster? The other concern that I have is allegedly some of the bots at some of these companies are saying that what's going on at a deep level, they don't quite understand. So the algorithms that are being developed for machine learning, they're seeing the output, they're seeing what the AI is capable of producing, but they're not actually quite sure what's going on. And in some cases, they probably could. They take months and months to actually analyze, but they are now talking about developing separate AIs to actually go through all the code that the neural network-based machine learning AIs are actually writing deep, like under the hood. Now, at what point are we just going to lose control of what's going on, in terms of neural networks, deep learning, and so on and so forth? Solution. I don't think it's the government. I just don't think we can sort of look to the government to regulate our data in these large companies. There's a directive that I think is going to be coming online next year in Europe called the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. If you Google Simon Montford GDPR, you'll see a piece I wrote for the Times about it, and I don't like it. I just think it's going to be an absolute disaster. And I hear that Trump made a few interesting announcements today, but I think Gordon's going to cover that later. So I think we need to, the answer is to take back control of our data, become makers, buy low-cost components, start constructing our own smart home connected devices using off-the-shelf technologies rather than depend on mainstream consumer technology companies like Samsung or increasingly Google starting to make their own devices, Apple and so on. I think out of all of them, Apple, I might be wrong, but they're, of all the major 5 kings, they're more respectful about our data because they don't tend to monetize the data in the way that perhaps Google or Facebook does. This image was taken from a smart home hosting solution called Zoe, where it's just essentially saying all the data that goes on in your home, whether it's a webcam or some kind of monitor or thermostat, that's data that's not being pushed to the cloud and exploited. That should be stored locally, and you can do whatever you like in your own home. Why not? So there are loads of decentralized tools that, instead of storing your data in sort of a honeypot, centralized honeypot, it crops it into small chunks, encrypted chunks. It's decentralized. If it's using the blockchain or private blockchain like Ethereum, it's immutable. It's distributed. It's decentralized. The thing is, a lot of these tools are quite techy, and this is the problem. The mainstream is saying, I can't be bothered. I just can't deal with it. So I think that the developers of BitTorrent, MadeSafe is another one, Ethereum, in terms of end-to-end encryption, Tor when you're browsing, Signal for IM, all these tools need to be made more mainstream and easier for the average person to use. Now, that being said, I think there are huge opportunities. So let's not get caught up on, Bruce Sterling is saying the internet thing is going to be a failure, there's going to be a revolt, it's terrible, no one wants it. I think actually we do. This is just something I stumbled upon. There are so many examples. It's an app. Excuse me. It's called Face to Gene. And some of these genetic conditions are very difficult to diagnose. And all this app does is it just takes an image of the patient's face and within a few minutes can diagnose to a very accurate degree genetic conditions that groups of specialists have spent years, if not decades, trying to diagnose. And this thing, just using machine image learning, gaining access to big data sets, patient records, the latest research, all that data that a GP or a human would struggle, I think, to digest and process in a short space of time. And another one, all it does is just take a voice sample, and it can detect any tiny little cognitive impairments that are undetectable by the human ear. That voice sample can detect very early signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. That's the combination of AI and connected technology. So this is a gift to humanity. Another massive problem, global aging is a ticking time bomb. There's simply not enough human carers to take care of all these people. And the sad truth is, companionship robots are going to be used in the home to entertain, take care, monitor in the case of a triple fall, monitor medication consumption. Robots are going to become a very, very important part of society. Cleaner cities, massive operational efficiency with connected technology in industry, smart cities, industrial equipment. generating potentially trillions of dollars to the global economy. And as I said, massive breakthroughs in healthcare that thought inconceivable just a few years ago. So this is me and my robotic friend. That's actually Edinburgh Uni a little while ago. So I'd like to just finish with this more upbeat quote to counteract the rather, I think, dystopic quote of our friend Bruce Sterling earlier. And like I said, what we'll do next is go directly onto the next speaker.